Hi, I'm Brian Zimmerman. I'm here at the Clark County Government Center Rotunda. I'd like to invite you all to see my piece, Greasing the Skids. It'll be open now until September 27th, where there'll be an artist closing reception from 6 to 8 p.m. Greasing the Skids is a term, or is a title, that comes from the notion of de-evolution, or things changing very quickly, an accelerated timeline. It also comes from the notion of progress, or things shifting and moving. This can be from the notion of what skids are, which is originally from places like Seattle, where they would fell trees and have them go down a hill. Places like Skid Row would come from that, to the way that we treat our bodies with food, and the way that we've evolved over the last 200 years, or a very short period of time, through what we eat and how we live. Well, the piece is about two major ideas. One is about change over time and how we perceive that change. And the other is an instance with my father at Walmart. So the one about change is that my wife is very much into nutrition and how we used to eat over 200 years ago, and how the body changes as we eat different foods. So part of this is based on that we have stable tears in the bottom, that as they eventually grow and get further and further along in their history, they become bloated, strange, abstracted. But in comparison, they seem only strange next to the ones that are at the bottom compared to the ones at the top. If we took a top chair off and put it on the ground and looked at it by itself, it would seem very bizarre and very strange. But seeing it come from the very strong chair on the bottom seems more like there's logic in the transition from one to another. So part of that is where the title comes from. Also, the second is from an instance from my father at Walmart, a much more casual story, where he and I are walking in, and we both see a young woman in her early 20s, and she has some clothing on that was a bit too small for her. And her belly button was exposed, and she had some small shorts on with writing on her rear end that was not flattering. And my father looked at me and he goes, "Son, is that normal? Is that what's attractive now?" And I said, to some people, yes. And that's a terrible story, but the idea is that what is attractive, what's exciting, changes over time. So for instance, those that were overweight 300 years ago were seen as very rich because they could afford large amounts of food. If you were pale-skinned, it means you didn't work very often. If you had long fingernails, then you were very privileged because you didn't have to do manual labor. Now, if you see someone that's pale, very overweight with long fingernails, you might have a different assumption about them. The chair is an easy stand-in for me as the body. It has a back to it, it has kind of a body, or a trunk in the middle, and it has limbs, just like arms and legs. So the way you sit in a chair, if you just hold your arms backwards, it's basically the same form. So in other words, this is another way of describing a series of bodies, or organic things, rather than a piece of wood. So the contortions and everything come from imagining, say if we're looking at something that's maybe even dying or decomposing, that it's strong at the bottom, it's slowly changing, it's trying to by the third level they're trying to kind of keep their feet up on the chair before them, and then they start to give up and slowly become more and more limp. Rigor mortis sets in, get kind of tight and curly, and then by the time they get to the top, they're just limp and kind of done. So there's a little bit of an organic nature going on with the inorganic form of the chair. This project was derived from one I did previously with only 4 chairs that I bought from a secondhand store. I took them and saw them apart and reattached them to do the same thing that these are doing. I just replaced the cushions with a new material. So they had kind of a patina of having been used for a long, long time in someone's living room. So for this project, I copied that original chair. Its measurements is a very simple design. And I made 60 of them, no strong significance in the number 60, except for through my calculations of working with the Government Center Rotunda, trying to work with something that would be large enough in the space to be somewhat daunting to the viewer, at the same time somehow either reference the space or mildly compete with it. The idea that you can make something larger than the person viewing it is a step towards recognizing how large the space that you're already standing inside of actually is. I've done sculptures out of steel, out of baking flour, out of wood, plastic, metal, all kinds of mediums. This is probably the most dangerous one, the largest one, and in that way one of the most exciting ones. The piece is called Greasing the Skids. It's 60 chairs that have been manipulated from normal to very abstract. It's over 17 feet tall. Please come down and have a look.